There we go. I always manage to forget that. So welcome everyone. As I was saying, this day 2, we're looking at Latin America and the Caribbean. And there we go. So today's session is sponsored by the Red Latinoamericana de Energías Solidarias, which was founded in 2020. And it's, as the name kind of implies, it's focused on Latin America primarily, that we have members from all over the world. And in Spanish, the name there, it's in the plural form because we recognize that the way in which we use energy, there's huge diversity in that, but also a diversity in the kind of the forms in which we kind of foster and enable and enact solidarity when it comes to energy as well. So just quick promotion there, if you're interested in joining us, there's a very short sign up form there, and also we have a Twitter account as well. And just to say that this network is part of a much larger consortium project, Energy Solidarity in Latin America. This is a little over a 3 years long project that is funded by UK Research and Innovation Agency, but it's a very large consortium with partners from across Latin America, primarily working in Colombia, Cuba and Mexico, but we also participate with a much wider network of practitioners and researchers, civil society organisations, including from Brazil and Chile. And kind of in short, our main goals with this project are to generate inclusive knowledge and really to address energy vulnerability, to enhance the resilience of energy systems within those different countries, and ultimately to try and bring about a concept that we call energy solidarity. So with today's session, we're glad to know I'll stop talking very shortly, because really the goal here is that we want to centre Latinx voices. So really, I think when we look at energy poverty scholarship and policy action to date, there has been a marginalisation of these voices on a kind of global scale. So I'm really delighted today that we've managed to sort of pull together a fabulous panel of voices from across kind of the region. And you'll hear from all 4 today. So Lina Correa from York University in Canada, Karla Cedano joining us from the Institute of Renewable Energies in Mexico, Eugenia Castelao Caruana from the National Council for Scientific Research, Scientific and Technical Research in Argentina, and Rosilena Lindo, who is the National Subsecretary for Energy in Panama. So really excited to hear from all of you. Just a very quick one to say that there will be a dedicated audience question and answer section towards the end of the session, but we do welcome kind of questions and comments throughout the session in the chat box in both English or Spanish. We don't want to kind of limit that. And or if you prefer, recognise that it can be a bit daunting sometimes to put that out publicly in front of everyone. Feel free to send anything directly to me and I can relay that on your behalf. And I guess the last thing to say is, to stress now, we might not have all the answers today, but really the important thing is about trying to foster that kind of critical discussion space. So without further ado, I will hand over to Lina to kick us off properly.
Okay, thank you very much, Harriet. Yes, let me start by sharing my screen. I've kind of prepared a little introduction to the topic. So yeah, just to say that I'm originally from Colombia. So in light of what Harriet was saying earlier, even though I'm not kind of institutionally working there at the moment, I am kind of from Latin America, and I'm very, very happy to be part of this panel. So thank you very much for this invitation. So yeah, this work that I'm going to present to you, I did mainly when I was working with Harriet in the Es Latina project. I now happen to be sitting in another institution, but still kind of working in partnership. But anyway, let's get to the topic in hand. Energy poverty in Latin America. What are we really looking at? So just kind of as a brief introduction, you'll all know that Latin America and the Caribbean is a very diverse region in every sense. This map here just shows gives kind of a brief taster of that in terms of climate. We've basically got every type of possible climate that you can imagine within this region. There are roughly 33 countries, but this varies depending on who's saying it. Some, the World Bank says there's 42, the UN Statistical Division says there's 52. I don't know, there's more or less some other 15 dependencies and other territories, all sorts of legacy kind of territories from colonial times. But anyway, that gives you a rough figure of how much there is here. Huge diversity in culture, geography and climate, of course, like I've said, but also in energy systems. So in terms of energy systems, this is just a snapshot from 8 countries that there was kind of easy available data from this website, Our World in Data. There's a huge issue with energy data that a lot of it is not publicly available. There's the International Energy Agency by far has the most amount of data, and it's not always freely available. So apologies that this doesn't include all of the countries, but this is kind of just to give you a snapshot of how the energy systems in the region more or less shape up. The region has never been too reliant on coal. Maybe Chile and Colombia stand out there a little bit, somewhat. However, there is a big reliance on oil and gas historically and kind of still now. So the red and purple bars there. There hasn't been much of a role for nuclear in the region. And then, so you can see the green one only appears a few times in very small proportion. And then this reliance on fossil fuels is quite big. So every country relies at least 50% on fossil fuels, with the extremes kind of out of these countries being Mexico up to 91%, and then Brazil lower down with around 54%. The rest is roughly around 70% reliance on fossil fuels. And the main source of renewables in the region is hydropower. So just to say that the different energy mixes that we're seeing here, as well as the different climatic conditions that we saw in the previous slide, then that means that these countries will be subject to different vulnerabilities due to the context specificity and also the different effects of climate change. So we kind of just to get that, keep that in mind. Let's get to kind of energy poverty. So I'm going to spend a bit of time in this slide, and I'm sorry that it's kind of a slide. It's just a big table. So yeah, but I think this slide actually gives quite a bit of information. So on this column here, these 2 first columns is kind of one of the main ways of measuring energy poverty, and it's very much related to SDG 7 and the goals and indicators there. So we can see that if we looked at energy poverty in SDG terms, so the first 2 columns, I guess the region's not doing too bad. In fact, in terms of electrification, for the eyes of the SDG 7, we might be doing great. But there's still many challenges in rural areas mainly, which are the numbers in brackets. And then this is explained, of course, by challenging geographical conditions and difficult to reach communities. It's perhaps not, the high capital investments of connecting to the national grid are a barrier, but also there's kind of a lot of forgotten and marginalized communities in the region. When it comes to access to clean fuels, only Chile, Panama, and Uruguay have 100% access to clean cooking in urban and rural locations, according to this data. And then there are countries with very low access to clean cooking across the board. So, for example, the case of Haiti is not very good at all. And then with particularly big challenges in rural areas, right? So countries with lower than 70% access to clean cooking in the rural populations include Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua. So yeah, Paraguay, Peru as well. Anyway, so that's the situation, kind of one way of measuring energy poverty, but we know that this leaves out a lot of elements. It doesn't say anything about, you might have access, but you might not be able to pay it. You might have access, but it might not be reliable. So this paints one picture, but it's not a complete picture. So then another way of looking at energy poverty in the region is by expenditure. And this is an approach that's been, that's been quite popular in Europe, but in the region is not that popular. There's only been a few studies. This is kind of percentage of population in energy poverty due to expenditure, and there's only a few studies in the region. An approach that has been more popular has been kind of from an energy service perspective, and that's mainly studies that take the MEPI approach, the multidimensional energy poverty index. So what we have here, the numbers, is the figure for MEPI, if you're familiar with it, and in brackets the corresponding percentage of population in energy poverty. So acute MEPI is over 0.7, moderate MEPI is between 0.3 and 0.7, and low MEPI is below 0.3. And this relates to kind of the proportion of lack of energy services that a particular household would have. So we can see here that the numbers in terms of the proportion of the population in energy poverty according to MEPI can be quite high in many countries. And then finally, I wanted to highlight the multi-tier framework, which is a recent approach, trying to kind of go beyond access and measure things like reliability and affordability, kind of trying to take it one step further. However, it's a very data-intensive thing to calculate. So there's only been one study for Honduras, really, which says that quite a large proportion of the population are in tier 1. Now, tier 1 from the multi-tier framework is actually a very low level of energy access. It can only power a very, very few amount of things. Okay, so that's kind of the general picture from the region, and I now want to give you a really quick kind of dive into a couple of case studies that we've been working on recently. This is the case of Mexico and Colombia. So if you look at these countries in terms of other things that might indicate issues of energy poverty, you see quite high rates in terms of, for example, difficulties in paying electricity bill in the last 12 months or less. So it's quite high numbers. Difficulty sleeping in the last 12 months when it's too hot or too cold, in brackets. So this indicates kind of lack of access to services of perhaps thermal comfort. System average interruption, so hours that it's an index of hours that the system has an interruption, and companies experiencing electrical outages. So this paints a much more different situation than the one we saw when we were talking about access to electricity, where the situation seemed so good, didn't it? So when we look at, we've been working on an appliances-based assessment of energy poverty, trying to look at energy poverty from a different perspective and trying to make it more context specific. And we've come up with this kind of appliances-based assessment of energy poverty. Now, I don't think this is kind of the place to go into the technical details of how we calculated this, but to note that we've been doing two different assessments. One is based on a consensual approach, or about 50% of households owning a particular appliance, and the other one is a Pareto approach. So the thing to note from this graph is that basically these two approaches allow us to identify important appliances for a particular country. So here in the case of Mexico, we know that these appliances turn out to be quite important. So there are some, this is basically a ranked order, right? So there are some that we would expect, for example, a TV, fridge, washing machine, gas or electric stove. We expect those sorts of appliances. But there are others that are really contextually specific. So for example, blender is really important. And maybe people who join us here from Europe will be surprised at this fact. And then iron as well. These things can be really contextually important. We also looked at this regionally, just to see kind of differences. And we saw interesting things. For example, stove drops in importance in the hottest region in Mexico, and then fan and AC does not appear as important in the temperate region. And then in those regions, rather solar or gas water heater becomes important because the weather is not as hot on average. Again, just the caveat, these regionalizations are very crude, but still gives us a good idea. In the case of Colombia, it's similar to the case of Mexico. Again, the blender is key. I don't know, how else are you going to make your kind of daily fresh fruit juice, right? It's very important, these things. And again, when we look at it regionally, we see some interesting patterns as well. So warmer regions have fan as a really important appliance. In colder regions, on the opposite, fan is not up there at all. And then even in the hottest regions, the stove drops as one of the important appliances, actually. And then, yeah, we see differences in kind of the purchasing capacity of the region. So stereo and computer becomes important for the central and Bogota region, the capital city. So yeah, this is kind of the assessment that we've been making. But how does this compare with what we were seeing earlier? So if we look at access to electricity, we'd say that there's 0% energy poverty in Mexico and Colombia. If we look at access to clean cooking, we'd say that maybe there's between 15 and 6% in these countries. If we look at the energy services type approach, maybe around 30%. For the multi-tier framework, there is no results for Mexico or Colombia. But if we wanted to power the appliances that we found important in that I shared with you in the previous couple of slides, in Colombia and Mexico, we'd need at least tier 3, but more like tier 4, and I really doubt that that is the case in Colombia and Mexico. And then if we look at applier ownership, if we think, okay, if we've identified some important appliances and we define energy poverty as not having at least one of those appliances, then the numbers are really high. Then maybe we start to consider energy poverty in a different way, and the numbers can be really quite high. So what are we really looking at? That's just kind of because the way we measure energy poverty, of course, will lead to different actions to try and tackle it, right? So it's important to kind of have think about how are we measuring and what are we really looking at. So I just wanted to finish with a quote here from, this kind of has a bit of history within our group. It's a quote from José Martí from his essay Nuestra América. It was published in 1891, and what the point he's trying to make in this essay is that you need kind of proper understanding of your region, kind of just understanding of the context of your region without having knowledge imposed from elsewhere. In particular, he was critical of kind of imposition of knowledge from other places and from the global north, basically from Europe. So yeah, we were very happy when in our paper we had in our recently published paper, we had Conocer es resolver part of the title, and it was it was quite an important thing for our group, and just having 3 words in Spanish in the title of a publication in an English journal was really nice. But anyway, that's enough from me. I'll pass it on to Karla now, who will talk more about kind of what we found in this paper. So yes, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Lina. And Karla, whenever you're ready.
Ready. Well, thank you, Lina. This was a beautiful way of making a transition. So thank you, because yes, the paper that she's talking about with that conocer y resolver is basically the basis of my first intervention. So I think that important thing is specifically explaining that even though we're very diverse in Latin America, we share a common history and common background. Jose Marti, for all Latin America and the Caribbean, is one of the most important protagonists of our history and the way we have developed through time. So we share a lot. Even we share a lot more with Brazil that speaks Portuguese than with other countries, because we have this interculturality embedded. So in this regard, we want to talk about what we found, and this was also done under the umbrella of this beautiful Latina project that we've been working with. So we made this analysis, a review. We have to start with a review, any paper that has an interest in a region. And we found interesting things in the lack of studies about energy poverty in our countries, but done also by our scholars. So there was like this lack of interest, we could say, censored first in that way. We only found 62 papers in this 30 years span of look at Latin America and the Caribbean. And the most astonishing thing was everything started developing in our countries from 2016. So it was hard to see that there were scarce papers. So, but that also gave us a lot of in-depth analysis of them. So this was a large group. We had 12 persons working in the paper. So we were able, from different countries, so we were able to look at them in several ways. Most of the papers were written in English, and that also has a lot to do with this academic imperialism and this way that Global North has imposed a language to the rest of the world to be able to pull through a paper, a conversation. So this has also been a toll in a lot of countries. We know that in Europe, something similar happens because not all Europeans speak English. However, in Latin America, the amount of persons and also the different levels of, let's say, proficiency with English makes a toll. Of course, the paper here is available. I will share it with you. It's an open access paper. So, and especially, we have to thank a lot University of Birmingham, because they understood also that in our countries, not all universities have access to expensive databases of scientific papers. So that also adds to this divide, this knowledge divide, the language, the money to be able to buy them. So making this a particular paper in open access helped a lot, because now all of our all the persons that are interested in the topic will be able to access it, and that doesn't happen frequently in our countries. Because also we don't have the money to pay open access. So it's like this overlapping always series of these inequalities. And this is the way that different countries have approached the topic of energy poverty. And here you can see that most of the research has been done by Chile and Brazil. Some of it has been done by Mexico and Peru, Ecuador, no? In general, the focus has been in Latin America, and then we have the rest of the countries. And also, another very interesting thing that we wanted to highlight is how many papers are just general papers about energy poverty in Latin America, with a focus on some country or done by some of us, which ones are focusing on only one country, the green one, and which studies are comparative. When do we add the comparison between a couple of countries or 7 or more countries in Latin America? So then we can see that most of the interest has been done in one country. And also, and here are some of the unveilings that we found in this interest. Of course, and this is one thing that was a shock for all of us, because this is not the way that energy poverty is being studied in other countries, is that there is an underrepresentation of social science. Basically, most of the papers, almost 70% of them, were led by a scholar whose affiliation or whose most important discipline is a STEM one. So most of the papers have this techno-economic approach to energy issues. It suggests, and the ones that we read just confirm it. As a matter of fact, I am an engineer, no? And I lead at least one of those papers. Also, in these papers, certain characteristics that are those intersectionalities that are so important to understanding better energy poverty are missing, like gender, ethnicity, age, of course, disability. They're really very rarely analyzed and sometimes mentioned, but we still need a lot of work to be done there. So we found that we need to engage with more social scientists in order to have a different way of looking at things. And also the type of questions that we address, we're still, let's say, if there were tiers in knowledge, well, there are, but now in this particular topic, I want to say it, we are in the location and the quantity. No? We're looking at which geographic areas are most impacted by energy poverty and how many persons are energy poor. That's basically the focus of these 62 papers. What things are we not asking in these papers? Who are the persons most affected? No, this intersectionality, trying to see gender, race, ethnicity, the disability, age, in which part of the country we can find this paper and why. And also something that is pivotal for public policy is what are the characteristics for an energy poor household. So we have to move beyond location and beyond quantity to be able to get into a more in-depth understanding of things. We need to conocer, we need to understand. In this regard, what are we, let's say, posing as important future research direction? Well, basically, we have to, and here is something that I would like to stress for the global north, and this is one of the reasons that we are so happy to be able to be showing and showcasing a study of Latin America and the Caribbean to a group that is so global north, Europe and the rest of the people that are here in this space. Because we believe that, and we want to tell you that, we look a lot, let's say, the main source of knowledge that we can find as Latin Americans and people in the Caribbean are from global north spaces. So even though you might not realize it, you're being part of this. We always call it an imperialism, a colonialism, but it's also, we need to grow from those things that you do and from the things that you have advanced at a time. It would be very silly to start analyzing a topic without taking in consideration what has been done in the past. So this is a great responsibility for you guys in the global north, because that's the way we are looking for the challenges and we're trying to learn from those experiences, internalizing them. We don't tropicalize because that doesn't make sense in such different contexts, but internalizing the knowledge and then growing from it. So even though you don't think it matters, it matters. We need that also the knowledge that is produced in the rest of the world, we needed to have this openness and this possibility of us engaging in it. And here are two challenges that we found that they're very important for studies in Latin America and the Caribbean. The first one is intersectional analysis of social vulnerability. We need way more social scientists really working in interdisciplinary teams so we can do in-depth intersectional analysis, because we need to understand the causes, not only the symptoms or the way energy poverty presents itself. In that regard, since we need more intersectionality in the analysis, of course we need more research teams with interdisciplinary in itself, but we need to traverse to interdisciplinary spaces. We might even invite sometimes some social scientists, and then we ask them to be part of our group and we try to communicate, but we need it to be rooted. We need to understand each other better. And we both, or all the disciplines in our country sometimes have a little struggle in communicating themselves with each other. So it is a struggle. We're not so used to do this interdisciplinary research, but we need to move forward from that. And I know that good data or better data is a problem everywhere in the world, but specifically in our countries and understanding the scarcity of resources, it has not been easy to devote investments from our government to have better data. But we need to push forward for better data, because without proper information, without regular information, and most importantly, without curated, good quality information and data, we cannot be able to interconnect those sets. We have different surveys in our countries, and sometimes they are done only once in a lifetime. There is no continuity, and sometimes they're not, and most of the time, I insist, they are designed for a particular purpose. We need to be able to push forward a more in-depth, public policy-oriented, interconnected agenda, so we can have better data that we can analyze, and then we can move forward from quantifying persons and highlighting areas to be able to understand the causes and to finally pull through and get through the attention to the solution, to the resolver, as Jose Marti said, spaces. We're proposing that these are some intersectional analysis that we could work on social vulnerability. Of course, embed factors like, as we said, we cannot find now right now, or they are very scarcely touched, race, disability, age, and gender. We need more of that. We need more to understand those factors in a better posed way. And here I put an example. Some of the surveys ask for who is the head of the household. And normally, and this is something that happens in our countries, the people that is interviewed will ask what it's supposed to be. So there are a lot of moments that when we interview a woman in our country, since we have these matches and this orientation towards these male-dominated spaces, a woman will say, a man is the head of the house, when really the woman is the one who's taking the responsibility, and sometimes even the man is not even in the house. But we have to find ways to have this better information reflected in our survey. Use participatory methods to co-generate understanding. That's also another issue. We need to evolve from these vertical spaces of counting, of highlighting, of analyzing the subject of interest to understand we need more co-generation of this understanding. And also another very interesting thing, avoid stigmatization. We have to center cultural practices and avoid stigmatization, because a lot of our cultural practices don't really meet certain services, and we have been as scholars respectful of them. And a lot of things go on studies about cooking with wood, and it has always this stigma that it's unhealthy, it's poorly done, it's not renewably managed, so sustainably managed. So we have to understand and work with social scientists in our spaces, so we can understand how cultural practices really can get us out of this idea that things have to be modern. We have to spend more energy. We need to give everybody a stove or an iron, or all these ideas that come from different studies that don't have the, let's say, the routine and the cultural practices that in each different country, because also every different country has different cultural practice, but we need that to be able to understand better where do we come from and how can we alleviate such a terrible burden of energy poverty in practice. In regard to interdisciplinary research teams, of course, we need diverse perspectives from different branches of knowledge, but fundamentally, we need to make inclusive policy design and evaluation. Without all different views of different scholars, of different disciplines looking at a problem, public policies are never going to be as focused, as clear, and as effective. So we do need, not only for the sake of knowing, of conociendo, but we need it to be resolviendo. To solve the issues, we need more diverse perspectives. And also, we need more in-depth qualitative research. I previously told you that most of the leaders of these papers have a STEM discipline in their background. So since we are STEM, we don't know much, first of all, of qualitative research. And second of all, we don't understand in the first view the importance of doing in-depth qualitative research. It's complicated for us. We engineers, mathematicians, physicists are always looking for statistical significance, which, as social scientists note, it's only part of the view. So we do need a better understanding of these different energy practices, of norms, and the needs that every different particular society has. Well, and why do we need more interconnected and improving data? Well, first of all, because we have to move beyond this concept of essential or basic energy service. We have had a lot of struggles between our colleagues because it is very easy to try to, again, impose what is the minimum basic set of energy services or the essential from a vertical perspective, from this know-it-all perspective that we scholars, especially when we're not into the social sciences, can just impose on a community. And the only way to move through that is, again, improving the information that we have, getting in there and understanding that also cultural practices have to do with what a community considers their energy services, the ones they need. And there's no need for us to be, let's say, classifying them as basic or essential. The other one is we need to experiment with unconventional, innovative ways to see different data. No? And here we have an oral tradition in our country. So a lot of interviews, the oral information, some video information, we need to see data in a different way. Because as I told you, there's not going to be a miracle happening that because we need better data, our national councils and our governments are going to invest a lot more money into acquiring statistics. So we have to experiment more. We have to find different ways of using data, social media, for example, but we haven't done it. So that's another frontier that we need to traverse. And finally, of course, we have to improve and harmonize data across the regions, because to make comparisons, we're nearer to be able to understand the different phases of energy poverty, the different tones of energy poverty. And to do that, we need to be able to compare, to have more comparative studies with the challenge it presents. Of course, they're longer, let's say, they're harder, but they are going to be able to show us a lot more of not only information, but possible solutions, possible venues of attention to solve this when it is such an important issue for our countries. And well, I was telling you beforehand that we need more persons trained to be able to do these interdisciplinary practices and studies and work together. So when in the Project Latina, we found out that we needed more personnel in Mexico, but not only in Mexico, in Colombia, in Cuba, in Argentina, in Chile, to be able to work interdisciplinarity and to be able to understand this way of attaining energy, not as an end of things, but as a means towards health, well-being. Then we, the University of Birmingham and my institute, we developed an online course that is called Future Energy Landscape, as you can see, and the whole idea is to foster capacity in the face of change. So we have more than 30 experts worldwide contributing to content for these 6 weeks. It's completely bilingual, an online course that covers from energy poverty, rise to energy, energy and digitalization, of course, energy poverty and disability, gender, intersectionality, also some very STEM practices, prospective analysis. And here in this QR, you would be accessing it as we speak. So we have, and thank you to the financing of the University of Birmingham, in particular to Harriet's management and to IG fostering and financing it, we were able to get this course online. And we have been making different generations in Mexico, inviting different persons to be able to be part of this capacity building for all our regions. So we can now have a faster way of attaining these interdisciplinary groups, working together and having this sense of the importance of sharing knowledge between disciplines to be able to understand better and solving eventually the crisis, one of the most important crises that we face in the transition, that is energy poverty. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention. And now I ask for Harriet to lead the rest of the session. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Karla. That was a really interesting overview there. And in a minute, I'll pop the YouTube link in the chat as well. So without further ado, over to you, Eugenia, when you're ready. Share your screen.
Yes, thanks. I didn't prepare a presentation, so I'm just going to speak. I will try to be to make a short presentation. So, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here, Harriet. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to talk a bit about how Latin American states are addressing the problem of energy poverty and how they are recognizing the impact the lack of access to energy has on the living conditions of the population. There are not many comparative studies on the issue in the region. So when we review the policies and legal frameworks of several Latin American countries, in the article the colleagues have just mentioned, we find out that in the region, we don't have a formal definition of the term energy poverty. However, we also find out that certain elements related to this problem are present in many of the national constitutions of these countries. These constitutions establish governments are responsible for ensuring the access to minimum levels of public service, They are responsible for ensuring the possibility to navigate in safe environments or to access a decent home. All these rights implicitly require an adequate consumption of energy. There are also, national states have also signed international treaties that reaffirm these rights. And there is also jurisprudence set by national courts in some countries that have recognized these same rights, and that this jurisprudence have recognized that the access to energy is a necessary condition to accomplish these rights. So we can say national states have committed to address the lack of access to energy in the region, but as we will see, they still haven't translated this commitment into comprehensive measures. First, we have to point out that there is no single definition of what energy access means in these countries, and something about this has been said before. In fact, there is not an agreement of what energy access means among international agencies. In the region, it is generally understood as the connection to modern electricity systems, leaving thermal energy outside, and also leaving outside of the design of the policies other factors like affordability, convenience, quality of energy supply, safety. So policies, the policies that are promoted by the governments in Latin America are mostly centered on expanding power networks in rural and isolated areas. In some cases, they rely on renewable energy and distributed energy facilities to do this. These are very innovative. It is an innovative way to tackle the problem, at least in the region, but it has certain risks associated to the fact that the same households which are energy vulnerable are the ones that must be in charge of the operation and maintenance of the systems, the systems they use. So this puts an additional burden on households. Implementing these policies, in implementing these policies, governments recognize that energy is necessary for improving the living and productive conditions of poor and rural populations. But as I said before, little is said about thermal energy in the design of these policies in general. So the dissemination of clean and modern technologies to cook and heat households is still it's still pending of resolution, we can say. We need to think policies to replace the use of wood, kerosene, and even to replace the use of other modern systems like bottle gas, which are cleaner than wood and kerosene, but they are more safe also, but they are more expensive and time consuming than natural gas, for example. Having said this, that is not the most positive we can say about the policy. I mean, governments in Latin America are doing a lot to expand networks, electrical networks, but they are limiting the policies to the connection mostly. But at the same time, we have to highlight that these same governments have set energy tariff schemes that make it easier for low-income households to pay for energy bills. So, and this type of policy is widespread throughout the region. It is present in most of the countries. especially in the context of the COVID-19. When the COVID-19 arrived in the region, many countries implemented policies to ban the disconnection of the system or to freeze the prices of energy, understanding that this pandemic situation would put more stress on the economic and social conditions of households, especially the most vulnerable ones. So now that the COVID-19 pandemic is coming to kind of an end, it is important to analyze the place these policies will have in the future to alleviate energy poverty. So trying to resume a bit, or trying to wrap up a bit what I have just said, we can say there have been fragmented efforts to legislate on energy poverty in Latin America. There is some legislation, there are some policies that are trying to improve the access to energy in the population. So there is a political will to implement new policies that alleviate energy poverty, though this term is not part of the political agenda. And so we see there are at least two areas of vacancy for policy action in respect with with the policy and legal framework. We think there are two actions that must be taken into consideration in the short and long term. One is defining energy poverty on a national and regional basis to raise the profile of the problem and to show the impact this problem has on the most vulnerable population. In doing this, as Karla said, it is necessary to take into account the variety of contexts among countries and within each country. Well, it is something that we can, the variety of contexts in the region is easily seen in the map Lina showed at the beginning. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it was Lina that showed the map at the beginning. I'm sorry, but you saw the map where there you could see all the different climate situations in the region. So it's not only about climate; it's also about geography. It's also about market configurations. It's also about how the industries are organized. So there are a lot of things that make the context diverse. So when we decide to define energy poverty, we need to take into account this heterogeneity. On the other hand, it is necessary to design cross-cutting energy poverty programs, not only programs that give access to energy or access to electricity specifically, but we need public policies to regulate the role of the state institutions in ensuring affordable and equitable energy access for all the persons. We need long-term policies to address the structural drivers of energy poverty, such as energy efficiency in households, energy efficiency in the equipment, the quality of the energy supply, among others. And third, it is necessary to design direct financial assistance schemes for low-income households so they can afford energy bills. And this will be particularly important now that the temporary policies implemented during the COVID are being removed. it is to be expected that once we end the transition to normality, whatever that is, new levels of energy vulnerability will arise. They will come to light. The higher levels of energy vulnerability will come to light, and we have, at the state, the governments should be prepared to tackle this condition, this problem. So lastly, and as some of the colleagues have said, the policies need to recognize the physical vulnerabilities arising from natural disasters and climate change, and also social vulnerabilities resulting from the intersection of characteristics such as age, gender, and ethnicity. So we need to take into consideration not only the context, but also what happens inside households. Not all households are the same. So we need to go. We need to go inside that unit of analysis. But just to finish, I have said this before, but I would like to end with this. I think all these policies and all these changes would be impossible if governments don't include this problem and its consequences in the political agenda. They need to recognize that this problem exists and that that energy poverty is a multidimensional and complex phenomenon. So recognizing this is the first step to solve it, as it also has been said. So being here talking about this issue is also a small step towards towards making it visible and start to talk about this issue in the region and recognizing it exists in the region, even though our gas and electric prices are not the higher in the world. They are kind of low in some places, especially. But the problem still exists. So start to talking about it is a way to contribute to the inclusion in the political agenda. Thank you very much. Thanks, Karla.
Thanks very much for that. And I think that leads in really nicely to our final speaker. So Rosilena, the floor is yours. Would you like to share your screen, or I can share them?
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. I'm going to share. Let me see if it works okay. I don't know if you can see the presentation.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, let me verify that you are seeing the right part. I have to say that I have been enjoying so much all the interventions that has passed today, because for Panama, energy poverty is or used to be a planning debt. And I have to say, and also to recognize that I owe Dr. Karla Cedano a huge thank you, because almost a year ago, while I was planning to start the preparation of the universal access strategy for Panama, she called me and she asked me, "Hey, Rosilena, do you have any additional information about energy poverty in Panama?" And I said, the last information that we gathered for Panama was more than 15 years old. And she reminds me that energy access has to include a real and tangible measure for energy poverty as well, because it's not only not having the access to, but also the quality of it and the amount of it. So we in Panama have a national energy transition agenda that was created in order to comply with the SDG 7 and looking forward to use the digitalization process to decarbonize our energy matrix while complying with the Paris Agreement. But when we prepared that, and that was officially approved in November 2020, the #1 strategy of the 8 strategies that compose the National Energy Transition Agenda is universal access to energy. And we say that because to really achieve an energy transition that have to be just and inclusive, we have to assure that the population that is living in the 19th century comes to the 21st century in a good way. And also that means that we have to solve poverty of energy. We have to solve how we assure that the quality of the development, the sustainable development that we want to promote doesn't leave anybody behind, but as I prefer to say, to bring everybody in this process. Having said that, a few numbers that I would like to share with you is how we passed from the 90s to 2019, increasing the energy access for cooking and also increasing the electricity access. We haven't achieved 100%. There are a few sources that said that we do. That was a mistake. When I saw that, I said, oh, okay, I really would love to, but we haven't. We are missing around 93,000 homes without electricity and around 66,000 houses that doesn't have access to clean cooking. But when we see those numbers, that really looks like near to the 100. Not really, because when we look deeper and evaluate how is the energy access within the indigenous area, we have one that is the Comarca Nube Bugle that only have 4% of electricity access, and the one that have the most is the Embera Comarca that only have 35% to electricity access. And when we talk about the consumption of firewoods, we do see a real correlation about the work that we have to do in the indigenous territories, but also the work that we have to do assuring that also our health centers have access to electricity and clean cooking energy, as well as in our schools. And I wanted to share with you here an image of I usually say that this is how a local business model within the indigenous territories looks like. This is a house. Then to arrive to that house, you have to go from the main highway. You have to go by car 2 hours and then walk 2 hours. And that house is the last house that has electricity access in the Comarca Nube Bugle. And people from all the Comarca walk around 4 hours to go to that house to charge their cell phones, to charge the radios. And also this is the center point for people that want to access to health services, because from there is where they can have access to call the ambulance if they don't have enough battery in their cell phones. Having said that, for us it's very important that the national strategy for assuring access, universal access to energy, not only have the work of preparing and enable the conditions to achieve it, but also bring the people into the table, include the financial mechanisms that are needed to pass that and to achieve that before 2030. And after the conversation with Dr. Cedano, I said, no, I have to find help to support the Panamanian government in order to really enhance and evaluate how is the 2021 energy poverty looks like in Panama. So we received support from ECLAC in order to evaluate and make the diagnostic of energy poverty, and we start to evaluate the dimensions and the thresholds of energy poverty in Panama. And well, we evaluate not only the access, but also the quality and the spending that the population is doing for it. And I have to say that sometimes I complain in my house that I am paying more than $30 for the electricity, but in some areas of the Comarca, they are spending around $25 just in candles. So when people say they don't have the power capacity, we have to create additional mechanisms evaluate how they are able to pay. We have to evaluate the periodicity of it, and also, and I don't remember which one of you said it before, that we really need to assure to understand their culture and to know what in their culture they want to have access to, what type of appliance they are looking forward to have. And in order to have more accurate information of their expectations, let us to have a better way of planning, because we are looking forward to an energy transition agenda that includes modernization. We want to have electric cars. We have everything to be electrified. And we are really thinking if that type of model is what is going to work there. So in order to, I will pass this very fast because I speak a lot. So Javier, please let me know if I lose the time that I have for you. So having that evaluate, we start different consultation process. We made with support of the World Bank a interview with more than 200 and 500 focus group in order to evaluate their perception of energy and the energy transition, including the indigenous people, including the Afro-descendant, including women and youth. And also, as some of you already said as well, we evaluate more than 1 million exchange in the Panamanian database, in the social media database that make a reference to energy. And that was interesting to discover that the involvement of the general population and their different needs to support the energy transition is there, but we have to provide a little bit more of information and capacity building for them to feel and that more comfortable with the technology. And a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we launched officially the Panama Universal Access Strategy that includes energy poverty on it. And we are looking to focus on strengthening the institutionality and its legal framework for access and for poverty. We are just now starting to develop a specific financial mechanism for energy access and poverty. And one of those mechanisms that I really want to highlight is that I can't believe that was approved, but it was approved from the implementation of the financial mechanism to install and save money from energy efficiency plans in the government, and from the savings of the implementation of solar rooftop in the government buildings. All those savings are going directly to support universal access to energy. We have defined more than 15 capacity building process to empower communities, to empower women. And I have to say that when we went to the indigenous communities to explore what they felt and think about it, and what they want to change in their relation with the energy. At the beginning, they said, well, okay, I just have to go and walk around 1 hour, and then I have firewood. And I saw that some of them went making like this, pushing each other with the elbow. Hey, say the truth, say the truth. Well, after like an arguing moment of 10 minutes in their language, they say, okay, I will tell you the truth. The truth is that in the last 3 years, we have been having the necessity to walk 2 hours more, so 3 hours, in order to find decent firewood, because the climate change is making that our trees doesn't have enough quality of firewood to do what we want, and we have to go farther. With this information that is key for us, now allow us to have a better planning, not only within the National Energy Secretariat, but also with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ministry of Environment, and so on. And within the universal access to energy, we also include to promote productive uses to energy in order to really build up on the economic purposes that the different communities that doesn't have access or have put access to energy can do so and grow with the opportunities that come from the energy transition, and for sure, energy access. And a few examples that I want just to list, because I know that I don't have too much time, is that we start implementing different initiatives. One that I really love was the contest Innovate to Connect, innovar para conectar. We send this challenge to the local population, but also to everybody in the world that wanted to present an idea to accelerate universal access to energy in Panama. 20 companies participate on it for wind, and those ideas now are under implementation with the support of the IDB. And we are just starting in two weeks the empowerment program to make capacity building on installation of solar photovoltaic systems within the areas that doesn't have access to electricity. But it's not only that they are going to be able to do so, it's the way of we are selecting the women that are going to participate on that, because if you are the one that doesn't know how to read, if you have 10 children and you don't have anybody in your family to support and to provide, you are the one that is going to be selected, because we want to put the list at the beginning of the list in order to accelerate the reactivation of the economy, but also the involvement of rural women in this process. And after that, we are preparing like a workshop for them to have a storage of part, and their responsibility is to make the electrification process of their community. And we are starting with a community of 360 households. We also prepare a entrepreneurship program in order to not only capacitate women for that, but also have access to loans with no fees for them to develop their own enterprises, not only to install, but also to sell the different appliances that goes with the having access to energy. And also we have received the approval 2 months ago of a program within the GCF that is called Cooling Facility. We are part of the 9 countries that are receiving $156 million to take into consideration and implement different measures to tackle energy poverty related to cooling. Having said that, I just want to share with you some takeaways. We have to make a real planning with public policy, a real one, because sometimes we envision a real sustainable future. No, I remember one time when we were modeling how to define the future energy needs, and someone in the room told me, why you are saying that this house is going to use so much energy? They are just needing 3 light bulbs and a place to plug the radio. And I said, no, this is not the future that I want for my population. So we keep in mind that we are planning for the future, inclusive one, with education. We need a lot of tech for this. We need internet for education. So keep that in mind. Also, the energy poverty index indicators are the ones that are going to nurture the energy planning. We need information, quality information, updated information in order to make the policy real and also to translate that into investment, into real development. And that information had to be able for everybody, for every stakeholder, for the local communities, in order to decide what they want to do, what business they want to develop, what type of economic activity they want to plan for the future too. And the energy transition, sorry for the thing that I'm going to say right now, but the energy transition won't be possible if women are not there. So gender equality approach is a strong column of the solution. Please don't forget that. I know that you want, but please don't forget. And also, we also are looking forward to prioritize public policy mechanisms in order to start with the last, because the ones that are near to the grid, the natural evolving process of the electrification will go there. The one that is right in the corner have to be prioritized in order to tackle this hopefully soon problem to be solved. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. I think that was a really, really nice set of takeaways to end on. Well, we have a bit of time now for questions for all of our panelists. So I'm going to kick off with that, if that's okay with everyone. Good stuff. Okay, so we've got a question here from Karla, who's asked, what do you think Europe and other continents can learn from Latin American perspectives on energy poverty? So who would like to kick off with that one first?
Well, I'll go with it, and thinking very fast, I must say. I would say diversity in the concepts and the way we understand energy poverty is something that Latin America can that we can how will you say, gosh, that we can add to the work done in Europe. I mean, the diversity of ways we see at the problem, the diversity of uses of energy, as Rosilena was telling us about the use of wood, the renewable energies now, renewable energy facilities are now a new way to tackle energy poverty. So I think the diversity of approaches is something that we can add to the discussion, I would say that.
Maybe I can add something there, kind of building on what you said, Eugenia. I think that's a very good point, and just kind of to make it a bit more concrete is basically I wanted to kind of highlight what, you know, my point was similar to yours, but I was thinking of examples like, you know, when you're thinking about the diversity of energy uses and all of these sorts of things, you know, things that maybe Europe can learn is, you know, you don't have to meet a projected level of demand just because that has been what's been done in the past. You know what I mean? Really asking what energy is for, really trying to understand that. And then another thing that I think perhaps I think something that is quite common in Latin America is differentiated tariffs for different groups, right, according to different circumstances. Something that I don't see kind of so often in Europe. I think that's perhaps something that can be learned as well, specifically in relation to energy affordability. Anyway, yeah.
Karla or Rosilena, is there anything you'd like to add to those?
Well, I don't know if it's exactly directed to the question, but I do see that our Latin American countries are so creative. When you see people living in the energy poverty, they are really looking at an opportunity to do the best with what they have. And if we really use that in order to assure that we are going to create additional opportunity for them, we have to be sure that this is a way that we are going to improve the quality of life. I have to say and recognize that from my point of view, I feel that sometimes energy poverty is not highlighted, as Karla said at the beginning, doesn't feel, and this is part of our, I have to say, part is our fault too. We have to make the problem visible. We have to know the problem in order to solve it. I really love that. Conocer para resolver. Conocer es resolver. So when we know what we have to do and have the opportunity to have a wonderful quality of professional as today, that they know what is need to be done, and they share that and help us as Latin American countries to fill the gaps in the policy making, to fill the gaps in the financial mechanisms, to fill the gaps in the innovation and research that is required. Then we can see and feel confident that the future, a future without energy poverty, is going to be real. But we have to commit. We have to understand that when we take decisions regarding this subject, we are changing life. And I don't want to live here without saying that in those areas with no access to electricity, to energy, and or with energy poverty, there is a lot of population with a huge amount of talent, and that talent, our countries are needing that in order to reactivate our economy, yes, but to join together to fight climate change and make real our society to be resilient to that. And that is only achievable when having access to energy in a universal way.
That's lovely, really, really quite moving actually set of answers there from you all. Thank you very much for that. Just move on to another question here from Anna, who asks, have there been any examples you've witnessed of a clash of culture in regard to understanding energy poverty? For example, international donors pushing for the phase out of fuel wood, but disregarding local cultural understanding of essential energy needs.
Okay, now it's a little bit of my turn. I think that we have, in Mexico it happens, but it's more painful. We don't need it to be from international donors. Practical Mexican persons, I told you that Mexico is a land of contrast. So we have very well-intended groups that have been pushing solar panels in communities just for the sake of let them have energy without any social study, just because they have the money, and they're having a lot of money devoted to trying to alleviate an issue that most of these big companies or big associations or very big in good intentions, but poorly managed and poorly advised, have done. So what we have had is then a double, let's say, a double back effect. First of all, they're not alleviating the issue, no, at all. And then also the donors feel that they are putting the money and nothing is happening. So then they're moving to donate to other places and other spaces. So it's just really sad, and we have to find a way to move forward the agenda to the public arena and get it out only from the academic space or even only on the public policy space. We need to talk to the social arena and try to move the knowledge of what energy poverty is and entails and how to solve it.
I thank you for that, Karla. I just want to add that unfortunately, we can see a few of those examples of not successful stories within the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. So at the end, that's also something that fights back the penetration of the technology, because the local population said, this doesn't work. Look, now this panel is all rotten there. I don't have any way to use it again. And they stopped believing in something that well management could think forward and include a more involvement of the local population in the process. But I have to say that I hope so, that we have learned from those failures examples, and now we are able to do better.
Lovely, that's great, thank you. Quite a few questions coming in now. So one from Mohammed, who asks, which metric or method do you think can better represent energy poverty in Latin America? Yeah, Lina.
Yeah, perhaps I can just really quickly say about that. And I think you're not going to like my answer, Mohammed, but I think there is one. I'm not going to be able to say, oh, this one's the best. I think, you know, each metric tells one part of the story. And to be able to have a whole story, you need all sorts of different ones, right? Which is not ideal, because we want the easy one, right? We want, oh, well, just use this one and this will tell you what to do. But I think, unfortunately, with a problem so complex as energy poverty, and which so many different facets to it, then you need to do the hard work, and the hard work involves looking at different things from different angles. And then I would also say, perhaps let's not think only about metrics. You know, I think everyone here has said kind of the importance of other types of things that are not just quantitative, right? You know, let's just talk to people. Like, honestly, it's a really, really important part of it. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think that's probably the answer that you were expecting, but that's what I would say in relation to that.
Yeah, Karla?
I think we all agree. And basically also on that same regard that Lina is saying, is all of them also, because energy poverty is such a complex issue in general. So what we have found out is that every different index, as Lina was showing in her slide, gives us a different view of the phenomenon. So maybe the correct answer is we need all the metrics possible and talking to people to be able to characterize and really understand. So go further the identification to go to the understanding. And that is only being done by taking all of the measures into account and trying to look at them through this glass, like a kaleidoscope, understanding that it's not a two-dimensional thing, energy poverty. It's an n-dimensional thing. So we need n different moments to see it. So that's also my take as a STEM person. So thanks.
Okay, brilliant, thanks for that. So next we have Ricardo, who asks, what tools do you think we need in Latin America to help getting women speaking about gender equality in the center of the change that's needed? I feel like Rosilena might have some strong feelings on that one.
Yes, and I love the question because in 2 weeks, we are going to finally launch our gender and energy nexus roadmap. We started building that a year ago. And it was amazing, the process, amazing. I have to say that during that time, we have been constructing different strategies, energy access strategy, the energy efficiency strategy, the implementing the electromobility strategy, defining the generation, distributed generation strategy, and the innovation strategy. But the one that really got the people, we had the more amount of representatives from the communities, from the private sector, for the government, and the international cooperation was the energy nexus roadmap preparation. At the beginning, we start with 700 around 700 professionals that wanted to build on in the process, and we finalized with more than 2,000 people that get involved in the workshops, only for that. And with the dimension of Panama, for us was quite nice, because usually are only 100. But what I have to say that we make the difference here is to make us available, our time, to defining the way to discuss and solve the problem in an inclusive manner. We adapt not only for the working hours. If we had to do the workshops at night, we did it at night because mainly the women were working or having activities at their homes. And we start first making a sensibilization or sensitization of gender biases for everybody before starting the discussion. And then when all of the stakeholders felt that, okay, I know I have biases, now I understand why it's important to include it, we start the communication with capacity building, and we define around 10 pillars and more than 140 lines of actions in order to enhance the participation of women, not only within the energy sector, but also to promote the participation of civil society and in the empowering process of using the technologies for the energy transition. And that includes the rural areas. And I have to tell you that for us was amazing to see what a woman and a man can say when they feel that they have the opportunity to add value to a process, to really build a footprint in the way of our country is developing. So I just can advise you, please have the time, find the time to listen, to stop thinking that we in our cities, in our computer have the final solution for everything. No, we receive amazing ideas from the general population that doesn't know anything about energy production, but they know a lot on how they want to use it and how they want to get involved, and also what they want to inherit for their children. So when you make a person available to share that and to see the opportunity to invest in the future of their family, they got engaged. So I will share with you also the link of the launching of the energy roadmap for you to be with us.
Can I say a short thing about that? I mean, about the question. Well, what Rosilena said is great. I just want to highlight that we need, as she said, we need to put women in the center of to give voice to the women, to put them in the center of the discussion, and to have and to see that they, well, nowadays they are the ones that manage the resources in the houses, so they have more weight than other other persons in the households. They have to deal with energy poverty more than other persons in the families, usually because of this historical role they have. So it is, as she said, it is necessary to put women in the center, but we don't have to design policies that imply more work for women because they have a lot of weight already. So if we design policies that put the change or put the burden of the change in women, we are going to we're going to make the inequality even bigger. So we don't need to to contribute to that gap, trying to change energy poverty. I don't know if I was clear enough.
Super, thank you very much for that. Just conscious that we've got 2 minutes left on the kind of timing that we said this session would take. So I'm going to put together 2 questions. So firstly, how can we make better public policy in regards to energy poverty and lack? I think we touched a little bit on that, but maybe if there's any additional reflections. And then secondly, from Karla there, what does energy solidarity mean to you? And what do you find in the framing of it that is missing from other conceptual framings? 2 big questions there.
Well, I'll go very quickly with solidarity, and that has to do also with the framing of different agendas in research. We have all been saying that the importance of people, no? Of the persons of the communities. And I do think that let's say the framing that encompasses people, communities, and their active participation in energy systems is energy solidarity. Because even though the other things take the persons as the subject to study, energy solidarity acknowledge them as not only a stakeholder or an object, no, but as a part of, as an agent of change, as the only piece that can react, but can also act with preemption to be able to attain better energy status. So I think that is a very important difference, and there is no way to think on energy solidarity and forget the importance of participatory approaches with persons. So I think that that's like the framing, and I also want to answer with that is the space where we need a lot more research, because then we will have to do research of what in Spanish we call saberes. It is the knowledge of the person that we have to make them as valuable as the knowledge of us scholars or of public policy makers.
Thanks very much for that, Karla.
I'm just saying.
Rosilena.
No, go ahead, Lina.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was putting
I'm
her on the spot,
okay,
to be honest.
I was saying while I was in youth, me encanta. I'm really fascinated with the concept of energy solidarity, and for me goes beyond the involvement of the population, because I'm talking about my policymaker perspective. When you are looking forward to push an inclusive policy, you have to take into consideration that policies can change. And the only thing that will make a policy permanent is that the population and all the different actors that have to deal with really believe in that and ask for that when the policymaker person is not there. And to achieve that, the creation of the policy have to come not from the policymaker, from all of us. If that doesn't happen, the policy will fail. And we are not in a moment to fail to not to the population nor to the planet. So when we think about energy solidarity, for me goes beyond the generation that here, go beyond what we can measure today. At the end, we are building a society, we are building a humankind that is humble in the use of the natural resources, and that approach would really make more feasible the sustainability that we hope and the sustainability that we put in papers. But with energy solidarity, we will see sustainability in practice.
Lovely, thanks very much for that. Any final remarks, either Lina or Eugenia, and then I'll close. No, perfect, great. Well, thanks so much everyone for your energy, the enthusiasm, and most of all your time. I've really enjoyed this session personally. Just to say, we'll make kind of the recording and presentations available afterwards. We can send that out to everyone who's signed up. And also there are 3 more days of this International Energy Poverty Action Week. So tomorrow focuses on Europe, and then on Thursday takes a deep dive into Asia, and then Friday looking at Africa. So do join us for the rest of the week. And again, just thank you very much. And really that's everything from us today. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, bye.